friends. It's been a minute. This is going to be a rusty hodgepodge video. I only have a vague idea of what I'm going to say, but it's gotten to the point where I just needed to turn the camera on and say something to get my sea legs again. So please bear with me. The past few months have had a 1-2 punch of strange illnesses and a motherload of work. So it's all I've been able to do to function at times, let alone to appear, remotely together on camera. Not that I do at the moment either, but hey, I have to work with what I got, I guess. Those factors ended up affecting my overall sense of my 2018 reading year much more than I would have thought. So I think I'll talk about that first and then get into 2019 and briefly mention 2 books that I've loved in January. But first, 2018, weird reading year, really good in some ways, notably how much I ended up mixing classic and contemporary books. And as I've said before, I'm happiest in my reading life when that's the case, and this is the closest that I've gotten to that in years. I also read a lot more nonfiction, especially memoirs, and for the first time, biographies. My plan at the moment is to read a few more and then make a video overview talking about how much adding biographies has reinvigorated my reading life. I've been kind of amazed by it. But the weirdness partly came from the new breakdown of my reading. So I finished 150 books last year, but chose only 80 of them for myself. The rest were manuscripts or women's prize books, which I described as kind of self-imposed purgatory even at the time, or books I was assigned for review. Now, some of the latter were pretty good. Most were awful. Oh my God, you guys, bad to the point of comedy. And I'm always careful to be, thorough and respectful in the way I review them, but it was just a very different dynamic from any other year. I also transitioned from having a part-time internship and side jobs the first half of the year to my first 9 to 6, not counting my commute, 5 days a week job the second half. My teaching positions always had weird hours. So I used BookTube as a way to fill a lot of my time when I was feeling isolated. And then things changed and I went to having almost no time for it. And, I don't measure up to the person I want to be in a lot of ways, but I actually waste very little of my time. I don't scroll through social media and then look up and realize a half hour has passed. I don't get lost in cat videos. I don't binge Netflix out of boredom. Not that those are bad behaviors if you enjoy them. I personally wouldn't, which is why they wouldn't be productive. What I'm trying to say is that I'm really conscious of how I spend my hours. And that means that in order to watch more BookTube, I would have to cut into my sleeping time or my reading time, both of which are things I value a lot. And it doesn't help that everyone posts so much. And every video now is 18 to 30 minutes long. Whatever happened to the 10-minute video, people? If I were to follow just the people I already love and admire, I would have to watch 4 hours of BookTube a day, let alone the people that I've never even interacted with and who are lovely and wonderful. So I feel really remote from the community at the moment and have been getting back into the swing of things, but I'll never be as in it as I was before. The shape of my life is different now. And I know that there are plenty of creators with much fuller lives than mine, people who have partners and children and serious problems and more stressful jobs. I mean, I don't know how they do it. I just know what I can do. So I have 2 BookTube specific goals for 2019. And the first is to watch more and to schedule it in if I have to. Not crazy amounts of hours, because like I said, I really like reading and sleeping, but BookTube is important to me too. And the other goal is to get back to making a video every other week at least, because I miss interacting with you guys. Back to 2018 again for a moment. For some reason, I always put a lot of pressure on myself at the end of a year to read certain books to fill out my idea of what that reading year should be as a whole. I feel the clock ticking down all of November and December. I make completely unrealistic goals as if I'm going to drop off a cliff on December 31st. And I know how stupid and needlessly anxiety producing that mentality is, but every November I fall into it again. November of 2018 and December, for better or for worse, I was forced to drop everything because I got sick. Nothing serious, but seriously limiting. And I didn't meet any of my year-end goals, which I guess I could have seen as liberating, but mostly I was just kind of depressed about it. One specific goal from last summer was about reducing my TBR for my old book hauls. I'll link that video below. That project has fallen by the wayside. I mean, I read some of them in the meantime, but I also moved. And my new plan is a simple tracking sheet of how many physical unread books I own in this new apartment. It's on an envelope because it's what I had to hand in the moment I thought of it. So I went around adding them up, and it turns out that back in maybe October, was it? I had 90 unread books here. Plenty more at my parents' house, but I'm focusing on this living space to make things manageable. So it's simple. I adjust the number depending on how many I read versus how many I buy. And I just finished a book, so that brought it down to 84. At least it hasn't gone in the wrong direction. I'm not counting volumes of plays or anything that's difficult to categorize as a book, but of what I've recorded, my goal is to get it down to 50 this year. And for me, my ideal physical unread TBR, it's got to be a redundancy in there somewhere, it would be around 20. I don't know if I'll ever get there, but I love when Mercedes talks about this, and it really resonates with me that it's not about consumerism or guilt necessarily. I don't really buy much else in my life other than necessities, but it's about feeling the excitement in the moment you buy a book slowly leach away so that when you finally pick it up, if you ever do, it can feel unfair somehow. So I will keep you posted. I think I'll make a video in April to give you an envelope update. One thing that helped somewhat is that I only got 3 books for Christmas this year, and I've already read one of them. It was phenomenal. My twin brother got me the biography Cleopatra, A Life by Stacy Schiff. What a way to start 2019. It's actually much more a portrait of the intrigues and cultures of Alexandria and Rome in the 1st century BCE than it is a specific portrait of this woman, for the very good reason that very little is known for certain about her. And Schiff is scrupulous in her sourcing and showing you exactly how she comes to her conclusions, especially when the historical record is murky, and in discussing how Cleopatra has been distorted and mythologized by history, almost always to her detriment. I mean, only one word from Cleopatra's own written hand survives. Most of the major records of her life were written by people who lived a century or more after her death, and as you can imagine, all of those writers had agendas of their own. Apart from just enjoying Schiff's writing, which is so silky and playful while being informative, I mostly was blown away by the reminder of how little I know about the ancient world. Apparently, Nefertiti lived 1,300 years before Cleopatra. I always just sort of categorized them both as long ago queens of Egypt. Schiff points out also that Plutarch was writing at the same time as Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Little details like that. My education, including my self-education, has been so appallingly spotty when it comes to history pre-1776, to be totally honest with you, and so fragmented that I have very little conception of the overarching timeline of major world figures and events. It was also interesting to learn what a contrast there was between Alexandria and Rome of this time. Alexandria was the glittering, cosmopolitan, learned city, and Rome was a backwater by comparison. Alexandrians of the day would guffaw to learn that we now consider ancient Rome on par with ancient Athens. Last thing on this, there's a paragraph that I just absolutely have to read to you guys, which puts the fact that Cleopatra murdered all of her siblings, not personally, but she had them killed. It puts that in a bit more context. Over the generations, the family indulged in what has been termed an orgy of pillage and murder, lurid even by colorful Macedonian standards. It was not an easy clan in which to distinguish oneself, but Ptolemy IV did at the height of the empire. In the late 3rd century, he murders his uncle, brother, and mother. Courtiers saved him from poisoning his wife by doing so themselves once she had produced an heir. Over and over, mothers sent troops against sons, sisters waged war against brothers. Cleopatra's great-grandmother fought one civil war against her parents, a second against her children. No one suffered as acutely as the inscribers of monuments, left to contend with near simultaneous inaugurations and assassinations, and with the vexed matter of dates, as the calendar started again with each new regime, at which time a ruler typically changed his title as well. It's the inscriber's detail that kills me. The other book that's wowed me in January is Barchester Towers by Anthony Trollope. You guys, The Warden was enjoyable, and that's the first in the 6-part Chronicles of Barchester series. This is the second volume, and it's so good. Like it's so good. For people who love Dickens, I imagine this is what that reading experience is like for them. You know, just amazingly entertaining, witty, perceptive art. I had a time with this, and there are so many shades of comedy. You know, so many comic novels hit 1 or 2 notes again and again because that's what the author can do well. Trollope does all kinds of comedy well. There are so many dimensions and variations from scene to scene. Yeah, this is one of my favorite Victorian novels, and if you've been here for even a little bit, you'll know that Victorian novels are squarely in my comfort zone, so that's saying something. That's everything. I look forward to checking back in 2 weeks. Now that I've said it, it's gonna happen, you guys. But in the meantime, let me know what you've been reading, how you feel about your 2018 reading year overall, and how you've kicked off 2019. Bye, guys. Thanks for watching.